I need a copy though. This is fine. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishnapastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminatha Namine Namaste Saraswatevam Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadim Paschataya Desadarine Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Nityananda Vadutendur Vasudha Prana Vallabha Janava Jivita Patihi Krishna Prema Prada Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Sriman Sachinandana Purvaja Bhavonmatta Jagatrata Rakta Gaura Kalevaraha Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Rishikesha Indriyatmane Namah Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavarga Dvaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. So, we were at the tail end of the third chapter. And what is the specific verse we were at? 37. So, the topic of the previous week was that we take decisions, and decisions require the assuming of an identity. And if we assume a material identity, then such decisions could lead to flaws. Such decisions could automatically lead to our own downfall, which is the nature of our suffering. Because every decision requires that we primarily have an identity. Without an identity, you cannot take a decision. That's the first step. Right? One has to understand or assume an identity of a male for them to be able to think and act as a male. So there's first an identity assumption. Right? One has to think of themselves as a professional belonging to a certain organization. Then you have a certain decision making that follows. Similarly, one has to assume the identity or understand and get into it quite deep of being a father, mother, child, and then decision making follows. Flawed decision making is the result of a material identity. Right? A material identity is such that it will not take into account every other aspect of our life. That is the biggest challenge. Right? So we speak of lust. Lust essentially is decision making which is based on the body. Love is decision making based on the desires of the soul. What is the constitutional position of the soul? That's love. Lust, what is the desire of my body? How can I fulfill the desire? Take a decision, you go after it. And lust generally doesn't have to be the attraction between man and woman. Lust could mean any kind of activity. Any kind of activity is classified into lust where the motive is material and pleasure is being given to our senses instead of Krishna's senses. Lust is we are in the center and everything is about us. Lust is we are in the center and everything is about us. Right? Everything is about us. That's lust. Love is Krishna is in the center and we are in the periphery. That's love. There's a big distinction between lust and love. Who is in the center? Krishna is in the center, love. We are in the center, lust. Why are we taking decisions? Are decisions based upon the identity of the body? Lust. Decisions based upon an identity of being Krishna's servant, the spirit soul? Love. There is no such thing as love in this world. There is no such thing. Shastras define kama and Shastras define prema. Two distinctions. You have mundane love or mundane aspect of love is nothing but a perverted reflection of what is spiritually supposed to happen. A perversion is where reality is obscured. So a perversion is where Krishna is supposed to be in the center, instead I am placing myself in the center. This is a perverted reality and this is lust. There's love and the opposite of it is lust. And Krishna says this is the all-devouring enemy of the world. What destroys the world? Lust. What destroys the world? Again, it is lust. What destroys the world is sexual energy. The destruction of the universe is a manifestation of sexual energy. It is the same energy that creates, has the ability to destroy. It is the same energy that creates, has the ability to inflict pain. It's all around sexual energy. The spiritualist transforms sexual energy and uses sexual energy for purposes of serving the Lord. You heard of the word ojas? Right. Ojas is the ability of being able to conserve prana, which is the life force. Sex life is when we give prana away. See, when we are trying to bring forth another entity into the world, prana has to leave for another entity to come into the being. Sex life is where prana leaves the body. Excessive sex life means reduction of longevity. There's reduction of longevity. There are certain species of animals, certain lower species of animals, and they just procreate once and the male has to leave his body. Finished. There's death. Just one procreation, there's death. So what does it tell you? It tells you that that energy has the ability to destroy. It does not happen in the human species, but it happens methodically in the human species. There's loss of prana. Prana leaves. Prana leaves the body. Right. So you see that people who are maintaining brahmacharya, people who are maintaining celibacy, their ability to think, their ability to absorb Shastra, their ability for memory is amazing. Because everything has to do with prana. Conservation of prana automatically allows them to be able to think. Right? You have people who are saintly, people who are spiritual, they conserve this energy because they don't waste it. Because they have developed a love-centered life where Krishna is in the center and they are in the periphery serving Krishna. So they don't waste this prana. So this prana is being cultivated and the prana helps in moving up and rising through the modes to the highest platform. Now energy is being used constructively. If you notice in many ashrams, right, you see scandals erupting. And it is quite amazing that someone takes on spiritual life and then has a scandal. Right? Pretty amazing. You find it quite often in the papers in India that some fellow has gotten caught, with some affair, and he was actually the leader of an ashram. So one wonders, what exactly is happening in those places where someone has decided to maintain celibacy. They start an ashram, they want to be able to cultivate their, spiritual life, and end up falling prey to something which is even worse than what a mundane person with no education or spiritual background would get into. Right? There's a huge loss of character, even amongst those who are on the spiritual path, and you find it quite amazing as to what is it which allows such a person to fall into that category. The answer is that that is not a fall that has taken place the day he was caught. That is a fall that has taken place years and years and years back, and it has just progressed, and someday or the other it had to manifest. So whatever is physical activity, physical sexual activity, if that stops without the ability to transform sexual energy and being able to transform what is material into spiritual, such energy builds up in the subtle form as a craving for power. The need for recognition, the need for power, the need to control, all of these are subtle manifestations of sex life. What is gross is now subtle. The need for power. So you see that in spiritual life, in ashrams and so on and so forth, you have people building societies and then wearing saffron, and then you find that suddenly they come into the papers saying they've had a problem. So now what was physically happening becomes a mental obsession, and instead of seeking physical gratification, the person is seeking mental gratification in terms of recognition, in terms of control, in terms of other aspects which are negative. Both of these are manifestations of sexual energy. So one really has to understand this. And the reason why I asked you as to what destroys the world, it is sexual energy. And sexual energy has the capacity to destroy us. If it can destroy existence, it can destroy us. It can destroy us. This is tamas. It is very tamasic. It can destroy very easily. So one has to, once you enter into spiritual life, recognize what is lust and what is love. You have to recognize it. And then the whole process of spiritual life is to be able, spiritual life in the sense, regulations, regulatory life. Even in family life, there are regulations. One doesn't act like an animal. We are in family life, but there are regulations. Why? These regulations fundamentally allow us to be able to move this base instincts and then rise it above and use the energy for higher purposes. Energy is the same. Understand this. Right? We read about it, we learnt about it in physics, fundamental physics, high school physics, that energy is the same. Right? You can use energy in any which way you want. It either manifests itself destructively or you can use it constructively. One of those. So one has to watch ourselves. Observe your internal dialogue. Observe what's going on in that heart when no one is watching. Observe what is going on when we are away from this surrounding. When we come here, there's a certain mood. When you walk out and you spend a week, observe what's going on in this place, in the chitta. What kind of conversation is happening within? Take a very close inventory of what is happening within, because what is happening within is reality. What is happening within is reality. It's just bound to manifest itself in the form of decisions in a matter of just days, months, years. It's going to happen. Observe what's happening inside. And when you start observing what is happening inside, you will find that your behavior is inconsistent with what is happening inside. There is a behavior outside and there is an internal thought process. And neither of these are connected. There is no alignment with the internal and the external. And then you have the existence of the soul who is deep within, who has his own aspirations of wanting to serve. So imagine, the existence of a person who is in lust is so fragmented, the person is bound to be frustrated. How is it fragmented? You have the body with its own agenda. You have the mind with its own agenda. Something else is going on within. Externally there's something. Internally there's something. And then the soul is aspiring for a connection with God. Can you imagine this? This is a fragmented existence where three people are living in the same house. Neither of them are getting along with the other. None of them are getting along with the other. Every one of them has an agenda which is quite the opposite of the other. That's the manifestation of lust. And when you have a life which is completely fragmented, which is in different directions, how do we expect that higher life to be harmonious? It's fragmented. How do you expect a broken system to yield a harmonious result? It's a system that's been broken fundamentally. How do you expect it to give us beautiful results? There is no coordination, there's no synchronization. Inside I'm thinking of something, externally I'm behaving of something. This insincerity is the cost of everything. This is duplicity. It is better to be honest, because an honest person receives what? Help. The higher and higher and higher we go in spiritual life, right? The more and more and more there is a need for us to seek help and have humility. That's why it is said that someone who is very humble, they will not face problems. Because why? They will have the ability to immediately keep a focus on what they need and be able to ask for help. They would not have a problem approaching someone whom they feel they can trust and seeking their help, they're seeking their assistance. If they are not humble, then they have a certain image. Mana, false pride. Right? Mana, amani. Amani is pridelessness. Mana is one who has pride. Man. Samman, right? Man, Samman. Say in Hindi. So such a person is not going to be able to speak out because they have built the facade which they wanted. They are very desperately trying to protect the facade. They do not want the facade to be damaged. They are just trying to protect that image. Most people live for a certain image. Most people live for a certain image. That's what this is. It is more important for most people to protect an image rather than living by what is right. Big difference. And that causes such confusion, that causes so much trauma. So this is lust. The manifestation of lust is in so many different ways. Fundamentally, it is fragmented. Fundamentally, it's an existence which is very painful. It's great suffering. It is separation from Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, very clearly, he used to shed tears. I've shared this so many times. He used to shed tears while walking past a country club. He used to see old white men here in America playing golf, wealthy people, and he used to shed tears. And people used to wonder as to why are you shedding tears looking at people who seem to be doing well in life. And he used to say, these men, they are 70, 75 plus, and they're spending the last few years of their life pushing a little ball into a hole. That's golf. They're spending the last few years of their life pushing a little ball into a hole. And that's what they're doing. And this is the way they while away their time, while away their energy. So someone who is very compassionate is able to see this fragmented existence. They can see through this. They can see through the suffering. Someone who is spiritually oriented can see the problem even in something which is apparently wonderful externally. That now you have an image, you're living for the image, you're working for the image is making you do everything, and we are working hard to protect a certain image. There's no more such thing as wanting to live by a certain principle. It is more so that I have an image that I have to protect, so let me make sure that everything is right. So these are aspects which are extremely challenging in spiritual life, when there is an internal dialogue which is quite the opposite of what is externally required. Right? Observe yourself. Please observe yourself for half a day. Just half a day or even 1 hour and see what's going on inside. You'll be amazed. You'll be amazed about the contradictory existence that we lead. You'll be amazed about how many times we contradict our behavior outside and behavior inside. It's completely different. We say one thing, but then we're thinking something else. So that is extremely dangerous. That is lust. Lust is where we are right in the center and everything is being done for our pleasure. Everything is being done to protect our sovereignty. And Krishna is in the periphery. And in such a case, we even go to the temple making a demand that you do something for me. This attitude remains, right? What is this whole principle of going to the temple? Saying, you do something for me, Krishna. I'm right in the center. You are my servant. You better ensure that you do something for me. I'm chanting. I'm waking up. I'm doing seva. You better make sure I have my job right. How many times that we do get challenged in life, and immediately the first thing and the first person we distrust and we question is Krishna. I did so much for you. I'm chanting your names and you're supposed to fix everything for me. Where did you go? You're on vacation. Right? We question God, and it quite naturally happens. I've done so much for you. Where did you go when I needed you? So we somehow or the other are doing what? We are keeping ourselves in the center. This is lust. There are so many subtle aspects that you should start observing, that whenever we are in the center, it is lust. And what is it which we crave for? What is it we are craving for? Love. It's quite the opposite of what we are constantly doing. So our behavior is self-destructive. Our behavior is self-destructive because constantly we are doing things that are inimical to our existence. We are craving for love, but we act in lust. And we somehow expect that life is going to be wonderful. How? How can life be wonderful when we constantly make arrangements for the opposite? When we strive to make arrangements for the opposite. It's quite the opposite. So the results come through, and there's damage, there's suffering. So that's the fundamental teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, is to keep Krishna in the center. That's the fundamental teaching of the 3rd chapter. No wonder Krishna talks about lust right at the end of the 3rd chapter. The 3rd chapter is about Karma Yoga. It is about acting in this world while keeping Krishna in the center. So now you have chosen a certain life. You have chosen to be married. You have chosen a certain profession. You have chosen to lead a certain kind of life. Right? And Karma Yoga is about how to keep Krishna right in the center while taking decisions in that particular ashrama and that particular varna. Ashrama, social status. Being married, being single, being sannyasi, being vanaprastha, that is ashrama. Varna, profession. Being Brahmanical, being Kshatriya, being Vaishya, being Shudra. One of those. I have chosen a certain profession. How do I keep Krishna right in the center? How can I make decisions based on that? That is 3rd chapter. What prevents us from making decisions? A state where we are making decisions in lust. And what did I say? Lust destroys. Lust is meant to destroy. That is the destructive force of nature. Right? That is how it's destructive. And love is supposed to conserve. Love is supposed to protect and nurture. The opposite. So when we constantly take decisions by staying in the center, we are acting in lust. It's the opposite of what Krishna wants us to do in the 3rd chapter, which is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is Krishna is in the center, we are in the periphery, we take decisions on how to move forward, how to serve Him better. Every decision is filtered based on the consciousness of being a servant of Krishna. I spoke of identity in the beginning of the class. You take on the identity of being a servant of Krishna and take decisions. Take a decision of being a professional with Krishna being in the center. Take a decision of being, in Grahastha Ashrama with Krishna being in the center. Take a decision for whatever it is, if you're a student, by keeping Krishna right in the center. Because by keeping Krishna in the center, we would have assumed the identity of being a servant, which is what the soul wants to do. By accounting for the existence of the soul, we are accounting for our deepest core existence. We cannot go wrong. This is the third chapter. And when you start acting, keeping Krishna right in the center, one progresses towards transcendental knowledge, which is the fourth chapter. There is no question of the fourth chapter, transcendental knowledge, unless one can master the foolishness of trying to be in the center and keeping Krishna away. So the process of anartha nivritti, which is giving up of unwanted tasks, unwanted thoughts, and unwanted things that have nothing to do with Krishna. Giving up of all these aspirations is the process of sadhana bhakti, in one sense. You're slowly, steadily chanting the holy names of the Lord, taking shelter of the holy names. You're serving, you're reading, you're waking up at a certain time, you're prohibited from eating certain things and you're allowed to eat certain things, right? You're allowed a certain kind of behavior. This is sadhana. And the meaning of sadhana is that which is being forced by sadhu, by guru and shastra. It is not spontaneous. Sadhana means forced. That which is being forced by sadhu, guru, shastra is sadhana. Why is there a need for force? Because there is no spontaneity. So we are being trained to become servants of the Lord. We are being trained. We are being trained to keep Krishna in the center, while regulating ourselves, while understanding and preventing our self-destructive behavior. We are being trained to love. This universe and this world is a school of love. We have been sent here to learn to love properly. And what is the meaning of love? Keeping Krishna in the center. This is a school of love. It's like a school. You have different people, you have different teachers, you have different circumstances, you have different experiences, and every one of them is going to teach you how to love properly. And what is love? Keeping Krishna in the center. Don't get misled by anything else. The perversions. Srila Prabhupada used to give the example, our acharyas. The perversions are like licking the exterior of a bottle of honey. The sweetness can never be tasted of honey because it's just a perversion. It's like a myth. It's a bottle. So you can't. It doesn't make sense. That's why someone who has realized Krishna, in other words, who is advanced spiritually, automatically has an aversion for material aspirations because they know it's not love. They know that's what they're looking for. If you're looking for love, why would you be acting in lust? Doesn't make sense. So that's the whole fundamental teaching of lust and love. And let's just read a little bit about lust. That's what the last ending part of third chapter is. This is the challenge, Prabhus and Matajis. This is the challenge. The challenge is that we are constantly making arrangements for lust while wanting and needing love. Right? We need love. We desperately are looking for love, but we are constantly making arrangements that are leading us towards lust, which is pretty amazing. That's why Krishna has kept these verses right in the end of the third chapter, telling us that yes, everything that I spoke to you in the third chapter, this guy is the enemy, lust. Kick him out. He's saying very clearly, this fellow lust, kick him out because he is the enemy. Let's look at it. 36, you say? 37. 37? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahasano Mahapapma Vidhyenam ihi vairinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world. So, we spoke about it last week. Contemplation leads to attachment, and lust develops. Now, we are in the center. Contemplation leads to attachment, we are in the center. I must get gratiated, I must get satisfied. That is lust. And once lust develops, 100%, there will be a disappointment. And when there is disappointment, what is it which becomes to this lust? It turns into anger. What is it which destroys the world? Anger. Shiva Tandava, right? What is Shiva, Lord Shiva, known for? Rudra. Anger. So, what is it which happens? We have contemplation, attachment, that is lust. And when we have lust, and automatically what happens? There is disappointment. The lust transforms into wrath. It is lust that transforms into wrath. And what does wrath do? Destroys. So what does Krishna say? It is the all-devouring enemy of the world. Lust, i.e., not keeping Krishna in the center, turns into wrath. Lust, when not satisfied, turns into wrath. Someone who is pretending to be a sadhu, right, has lust, and which is not satisfied, it turns into a wrath, it becomes destructive behavior. Then you want power, you want control, you want this, you want that. It manifests itself. It's all devouring enemy of the world. It is all devouring enemy of the world. So 38. Dhumena vriyate vahnir yatha darsho malena cha yathol bena vrato garbas tata tenedam avritam. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So, chitta, cheto darpana marjanam, right? That is the first verse or the first line of the Shikshashtakam. Chetaha, chitta, is consciousness. Darpan, what is darpan? Mirror. And marjanam, what is meaning of marjanam? Cleansing. The cleansing of the mirror of consciousness. And when a mirror is cleansed, what do you see? You can see very clearly who you are. When the mirror is cleansed, you can see who you are. Essentially, you are able to see that you are a servant of Krishna. When a mirror is cleansed, you can see that. And you can also see Krishna. You can see Vrindavan. You can see other associates of Krishna in that mirror when the mirror is cleansed. But that mirror is dusty. It's covered by dust. And what is the dust which is covering it? Different degrees of lust. So everyone has a cheto darpan, a mirror in consciousness. And every one of those cases, we have a situation of different layers of dust. In some, it is less dusty. In some, it is more dusty. Different degrees. So Krishna is saying very clearly, just as a fire is covered by smoke. What is he trying to say? Fire's real nature is to give out what? Heat and light. Light is the nature of fire. You can see it. Agni Tattva means you should be able to see. Light. Jyoti. Right. So, Agni is supposed to be very bright, but the real nature of Agni, which is being very bright, is covered by smoke. So what is here? What is Krishna giving us here? He's saying real nature is being obscured. It is obfuscated by something else. Very bright fire, but smoke is covering it, which does not allow the fire to come through. So that's one comparison. Just as an embryo is covered by the womb, covering again, very thick covering. Right? It's very inhibitive. Have you seen the baby in the womb? Picture? These days you have ultrasound, so many other things, but then every one of us remembers, this baby in the womb is a very uncomfortable situation. Pretty uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. It is said in the Shastras that the baby starts praying to the Lord. No, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, because there's realization deep within the womb. Dear Lord, do not send me again to the material world. And then the baby comes out and forgets everything. It forgets its prayers. It comes in touch with material energy. So baby in the womb is again a very restrictive position. And a restricted position, a covered position, where the real nature of someone who is supposed to be vibrant, who is supposed to be running around, is not seen because the person is covered and he is kept within the womb. It's fire covered by smoke, real nature is not seen. Baby covered by the womb, real nature is not seen. Hidden. Garbha. Garbha, the other meaning is it's hidden. The real nature is hidden. So similarly, the Cheta, Chitta, consciousness has a mirror. And if that mirror is clean, then one can see who they are. That mirror is covered by different degrees of lust. What is the dust? Different identities. What do you mean? When you see a mirror, you are not able to see. There are some mirrors which show that someone is thin. When they're actually supposed to be very fat, it shows you're thin, right? Somewhat deceptive. There are some mirrors which distort what the image is altogether. We are not able to clearly see who we are. We are seeing some other identity. I am looking into the mirror, I'm seeing I'm a professional. I cannot see anything else. I'm seeing, oh, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm this, I'm that, I'm Indian, I'm male. I'm seeing so many identities in the mirror. And is not the identity which we really are. Right? It's reality. I'm seeing something, but it is not the real deal. The living entity, Krishna says, is covered by different degrees of this lust. One cannot see who they are. Lust prevents us from looking at who we are. Similarly, one who has immensely given up this lust, anartha, is able to see who they are. They make progress. Now let's go on to the next one. Avratam jnanam etena jnanino nitya vairina kama rupena kaunteya dushpure nanalena cha. Thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Never satisfied. Never satisfied. There are different schools of thought, right? You had Rajneesh. You remember Rajneesh? From the 80s. Or was it the 70s? Anyway, his philosophy was that if you satisfy your lust, then you will be able to focus in one sense or the other. Different philosophy altogether. But the fact is, you can never satisfy lust. There is no such thing as satisfying lust. And there's a reason. Every time we take on an identity of not being Krishna's servant, that is going to leave an impression in my chitta. That mirror is going to be coated once. It's going to obscure. Every time someone is going to take a black paint and they're going to put one stroke on the mirror, I'm not going to be able to see clearly. Every time you act out, you're going to be able to take on that identity. Every time, remember this. Every time, we have so many identities. The more and more identities we have, it becomes more and more confusing for us. So the chitta is obscured. It's hidden. So every time one is going to act in lust, and lust means not Krishna, not being in the center, that action will itself leave an impression, samskara, in the chitta, in the consciousness. And the next time we act, we are going to process our intelligence through such a medium. It's like a prism, right? You're processing it, all your processes and all your thoughts are going through a certain consciousness level. A dog thinks a certain way because a dog has a certain level of consciousness. A human being or elevated human being, different degrees of lust, you think about what you want to do and take action based on the identities that you assume, and identities are going to be assumed based on the degree of lust. The more and more and more one thinks that they are the body, the more and more they're going to act on the bodily platform. So it's very simple. The more and more you think you are the body, you're going to act on the bodily platform. You're going to care only for the body. Correct? So what is it saying here? Very clearly, he says that lust is never satisfied, which burns like fire. It will burn, it will destroy. Because the more and more we create impressions of a certain experience in life, our next thought process is going to go through that particular impression. Think about it, right? We talk about childhood trauma, right? Psychiatrists talk about childhood trauma. Some people have phobias. Have you seen? Very unusual. They travel over a bridge and they're driving a car. They are in a car, they don't feel comfortable on a bridge which is so high up, and there's a reason for that. They are phobic of heights. And one wonders, why would you be so afraid of heights? Well, there are hundreds of other cars going with people who seem to have no problem. And some people, they tie themselves to, the bungee jumping. They jump all the way from the top. How do you see that contradiction where you are afraid of heights on one case, where you don't even want to cross the bridge because it's high up, you're sitting in a car, on the other they go onto the cliff and they're jumping. What is this phobia coming from? This phobia is an impression from the past. There's a very strong impression created in the chitta in the previous lifetime. And in this lifetime, thoughts are being processed through that impression. Someone could have died by falling from a height. It leaves very, very, very strong impressions in the chitta. We carry impressions to our next life. We carry our impressions to our next life. If something happens in this life which is very traumatic, you will carry it on to the next life. It's very important to pay attention to that. So there is no question of satisfying lust and being able to concentrate by keeping Krishna in the center. Lust cannot be satisfied. The more you try to satisfy it, the more you will want to engage in lusty activities. Because impressions are being created and you are processing your life through such impressions. Logical. Now let's go to 40. Indriyani mano buddhir asya distanam uchyate ethair vimohayati esha jnanam avrityate hinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Now understand, there's a hierarchy. Soul, intelligence, mind, senses. The soul, empowered by Krishna consciousness, empowered by Shastric knowledge, controls the intelligence. The intelligence, in turn, empowered and sharpened by Shastra, controls The mind. The mind controls the senses. There is a hierarchy. What are the senses? The body. The body is controlled by the mind. Who is higher? Mind. What do we say? Mind over matter? Right? Mind over matter. Even the mind is matter, but it is subtle matter. And something subtle controls something gross. A ghostly being has more power than one being who is in this body. We talk about Bhoot Pret. They have more power than someone who is caught up in this body. Why? Because the subtle controls the gross. Subtle controls the gross. It's a fact. So you have to be careful. Now you have subtle controlling the gross. You have the soul, most subtle, controlling intelligence. Intelligence controlling mind. Mind controlling body. How does intelligence control the mind? The intelligence has to be sharpened. How do you sharpen intelligence? By bringing anything close to Krishna, it gets sharpened. It gets empowered. Then it's able to act on the mind, it's able to grab it. The mind itself is not a problem. The problem is the lack of intelligence. You see, what is intelligence? You can make a distinction. You don't have to be a spiritualist to make this distinction. You have been given instructions because you suffer from, let us say, people suffer from diabetes. And diabetes is a sugar disease. You're not supposed to have sweets. You're not supposed to do this, so on and so forth. Doctor tells them. But the moment they see sweets, they want to have it. There's a craving. So just as they are taking the sweet, there's something in them who is telling them, the doctor told you not to eat. The doctor told you not to eat. What is that? That's intelligence. What is the mind doing at that time? Completely powerless. Why? Because the senses which want to taste are telling the mind, I want this, I want this, I want this. So if intelligence is weak, the senses are allowed to act by the mind, and then the fall down begins. It's finished. So if you sharpen the intelligence by coming in touch with Krishna through Shastra, through Sadhu's association, automatically such intelligence would be able to grab the mind when it is deviating. The Shakti, right? Buddhi. The is required, intelligence. Without intelligence, one cannot act. So Krishna is very clear. Where does lust sit? Lust contaminates everything. It contaminates the body. It contaminates the intelligence, contaminates the mind. So you have to watch it. So what should we do? Do not engage our intelligence in acting in a lusty manner. If the intelligence is going to be used constantly in giving gratification to the body, the intelligence is a sitting place for lust. It's like something which is being used for something. Like for example, it is said that medical science also proves, right, that, I don't know, some of you may have also seen this. I can say it very clearly. While we prepare for competitive exams, right, and there's some very intense practice, especially something like this, SAT or GMAT or GRE, there's very intense practice going on because you got to complete the test in 3 hours or 2 hours, as the case may be. You're really practicing hard to get those little examples and arithmetics or whatever the case may be. So the practice and practice and practice, you suddenly find that you are autopilot. You have to be on autopilot, literally, for you to be able to take, get the maximum score. So the moment you see it, you're processing it, and then you're spitting out the results. It is said that medical science tells us that special, whenever we engage our intelligence and we engage our mind, brains in one way, neurons paths start. There is this new neural path in the brain that is developed, and then there are, the brain finds ways to pass the circuit in a shorter direction and so on. So you do find that you keep practicing, and automatically your decision making is very fast, right? So similarly, you find that the intelligence can be trained. Intelligence which is constantly acting to fulfill lust would have formed a neural path, or would have formed some kind of a connection which would allow it to think in that way. We used to wonder when we were younger, right? Some people always used to get into trouble. They used to know exactly what to do, right? People, they arrange intoxicants, they arrange things and so on and so forth in college. Some guys really knew how to do all those things. How do you figure it out? They're experts, right? Because the intelligence is being trained to be lusty. The intelligence is being trained to pursue some activity which is unhealthy. The intelligence becomes sharp in that direction, and every time they become better. They become better because intelligence is being used. So it's a sitting place for lust. You use it for lust, it will become lusty. You use the mind for lust, it becomes lusty. Use the body for lust, it is lusty, filled with lust. On the other hand, you use intelligence in the service of the Lord. Now you're bringing in Krishna in coming in touch with intelligence. What happens to anything that comes in touch with Krishna? It becomes purified. You bring Krishna in touch with the mind. You bring Krishna in touch with the body. Purified. That is love. That's how you transform intelligence, mind, body into a spiritual machine. Either way, right? What do they call it? It can cut either ways. Double-edged sword, as they say. Last one. Tasmat tvam indriyani adau bharatarishabha papamanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. In the very beginning, Krishna is saying, nip it in the bud. Take the sword of knowledge and cut the great enemy. Cut the thought, because the thought is going to lead to contemplation, contemplation to attachment, attachment is lust, right? And lust, when not satisfied, leads to destruction, loss of intelligence. Cut it right in the beginning. A thought comes, cut it. Chant. A very thought comes, close your mouth, chant. Just call out the name of the Lord. Sincerely, seeking help. Thoughts come, chant, destroy those thoughts. Very important. Very, very important for us to understand this. Thoughts become actions, actions become habits, habits become what? Character, and character becomes culture. This is a series. So then you have a culture of lust. Everything that happens is lusty. So you stop the thought, and the last part, which is culture, automatically develops into a culture of love, culture of Krishna consciousness. Pretty amazing. That's the reason why I said you have to watch what's going on inside. Look at the internal dialogue. Look at what you're thinking. 80-90% of the time, people's thoughts are negative. 90% of the thing. You can think negatively, negative, inimical to the body, inimical to existence. Tasmat tvam indriyani adau. Oh, I'm sorry, this one we just did now. I'm sorry. Indriyani parani ahur indriyebhyah param manah manasastu para buddhyor buddho paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than intelligence. So the senses, for example, Working senses are superior to dull matter. They're superior, working senses. Working senses in the sense, senses of speech, senses of hearing, senses of sight, senses of touch. These are working senses. They're superior to dull matter. They're conscious, they're superior, they have a function. But the mind is superior to them because the mind controls them. The mind controls the senses. Intelligence controls the mind, and the soul is supposed to control intelligence. The soul is the passenger in the chariot. Who is the intelligence? The charioteer. And what are the charioteer? What does he hold? The reins. The reins are the mind. And what are the horses? The senses. If you consider this body as a chariot, horses are the senses. The reins that hold the horses as the mind. If it is held by a competent charioteer who listens to the passenger of the soul, the journey of life becomes comfortable. Realize, imagine being in a taxi cab where the driver doesn't listen to you. You tell him, I want to go to the airport. And he says, no, I will not take you. I will take you wherever I want to go. And then he says, even I don't have independence. The car is telling me where I want to go. I will go wherever the car goes. Imagine. That's our situation. We have absolutely no control over the body. The body, the vehicle, the chariot is making a demand. I want to go there. Okay, chalo. Just go, run after that. Because the intelligence and the mind are not trained, we just run. So one has to be able to train. The passenger should direct the charioteer. The charioteer should hold the reins. He controls the horses. Then you have a destination coming. You can go there. The last verse of the third chapter. Evam buddhe param buddva samstabhyatmanam atmanam jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjun, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So what is the conclusion? Conclusion is Sangha. Come for Sadhu Sangha because sadhus glorify the Lord. Hearing about Krishna and Krishna Katha, hearing from the sadhu about the conclusions of the Lord automatically purifies intelligence. Remember this hierarchy. If you want to control something, go to the higher person, correct? You want to control your colleague, you go to the boss. Higher person can control, the lower person cannot. So automatically you have a hierarchy established. Go to the right person and the person will control. Finished. That's what this is all about. Go to the right person and the person would be able to control. So intelligence is supposed to control the mind. Mind is supposed to control the body. How do we control intelligence? Bring it in touch with Krishna. How do we bring it in touch with Krishna? Shastra, sadhu, guru. That's how. Then the next time there is a thought, immediately intelligence remembers, I heard this in the Bhagavad Gita class. And then it is able to stop that thought right there. Okay, we'll stop right here. 9:45. Srila Prabhupada ki. Any questions? Maybe any comments? Yes. That's right, because it is like the horses. If you don't hold the reins properly, what happens to the chariot? The horses just run, right? Wherever they want. And each of those 4 horses can run in any direction they want. Any one of them, see, especially in a chariot race, someone who is really a good charioteer, they know that they have to control the 2 extremes. If they have 4 horses, they'll have to control this fellow and this fellow. The middle guys are basically power. This fellow is the direction on both sides. If they go run amak, you have no choice because the chariot goes this way or the other side. So yes, in a similar fashion, the body says, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Immediately it starts controlling and the mind says, okay, I'll satisfy, finished. It does not discriminate, oh, what are you supposed to eat? Are you supposed to eat? What time is it? What is this? No. I'm hungry, feed me, finished. Similarly, the genitals demand gratification. So the different aspects of our existence, the body demands different kinds of satiation, and the mind runs, and the intelligence being powerless, the charioteer who has let go of the reins, he also has to run, and the passenger, the soul, is also sitting in the chariot helplessly. So in the chariot where the intelligence is being grabbed by the soul, and the soul is exposing and telling his objective, saying, I want to go to Krishna. Finished. You make arrangements now, you will listen to me. My objective is I want to serve the Lord. Krishna has to be in the center. I feel this is to be done. This is the passenger taking command. Automatically the charioteer has to listen. The charioteer then picks up the reins because now he's getting sharpened. He's getting a few kicks. Right? In the Shastras, in the old chariot, in the armies, in the Puranas, it is said, while they're fighting a battle, the chariot, the warriors, they do not have time to even say a command. So the charioteer who is sitting there, they'll kick him literally. Go to the left, go to the right. They don't have time to react. They're fighting, they're shooting arrows at each other. They don't have time, they're taking a decision. They literally kick the person in front. So the passenger takes control of the chariot. The charioteer cannot be in control. The horses cannot be in control. The passenger takes control. The passenger is the soul. We have to take control of this horse, tame it, and it has to be directed by superior intelligence. That's how things work. Anything else? Right? Srila Prabhupada ki